In this video, we're going to talk a little bit about pronouns. We'll talk about some of the different kind of pronouns that we have in English, and we'll talk about how to use them, and then we'll also talk about some common mistakes that you might want to try to avoid with pronouns. So the first type of pronoun that we're going to talk about are subject pronouns. And as you might guess, subject pronouns are used as the subject of a sentence. So this one is not too difficult. The name really makes sense with how it's used. So the subject pronouns in English are I, you, me, they, he, she, and it. So all of these pronouns would be used in the subject position. So for example, if we said something like, Kate called her mother, here the subject of the sentence is Kate. So I would use a subject pronoun to replace it, and Kate is singular and it's feminine, so I would use the subject pronoun she. I would say she called her mother. Sometimes you might have two subjects, so I might have something like this. I might say Brian and Kate got married. So here, because my pronoun is plural, my subject is plural, I'm going to use the plural pronoun they, and I'm going to say they got married. Something to keep in mind is that if your plural subject includes I, then you are going to actually use the plural first person pronoun. So let's say, for example, that instead of Brian and Kate, it says Brian and I got married. The pronoun that I would use here is not they, I would say we. Anything and I is going to give you we as the subject pronoun. Okay, so now let's take a look at object pronouns. Object pronouns, again, this is pretty obvious. Object pronouns are used as objects of a sentence. So any time that you want to replace a noun with a pronoun, and it's in the object position, you're going to use an object pronoun. So the object pronouns are me, you, him, her, it, us, and them. Okay, so think about that sentence that we had from the last slide. If I said Kate called her mother, right, this time I want to think about her mother is the object of the sentence. So if I want to replace that, I'm not going to say Kate called she. That wouldn't work because it's not the object of the sentence. So I would say Kate called, and I would use the object pronoun her because it's in the object position in the sentence. Now the same thing would apply if I said Kate called her mother and father, right? It's two, so I would want to use them to replace that. And then the same rules apply if I said Kate called her mother, and if I wanted to use I would say me. Kate called her mother and me, or Kate called us, to replace that pronoun there. Possessive pronouns are used to replace possessive nouns. So if you remember, right, possessive nouns are nouns that have apostrophe. So if I said something like Kate and I wanted to make it possessive, I add apostrophe S, Kate's. Okay, so that would be possessive. So possessive pronouns replace possessive nouns. And the possessive pronouns in English are mine, yours, his, hers, its, ours, and theirs. And I would use them to replace a possessive noun and another noun. So, for example, if I said, that is Kate's pencil, then I would replace that with a possessive pronoun. So in this case, Kate is third person singular feminine, so I would want to use hers. So I could say something like that is hers. And hers replaces the possessive noun here as well as the noun that it's modifying. So possessive pronouns kind of replace a phrase instead of just one noun. Okay? Or I could say something like that. Pencil is hers. So here I'm going to use possessive pronouns alone. Now, possessive pronouns look a lot like something else. They look a lot like something called possessive adjectives. Okay. Possessive adjectives look a lot like pronouns, but they don't function like nouns. They function like adjectives. Adjectives are words like beautiful or smart or tall or short, and they modify nouns. So possessive adjectives do the same thing that regular adjectives do. They modify nouns. But they look kind of similar to the possessive pronouns. So here are the possessive adjectives. My, your, his, her, its, our, their. But with possessive pronouns, right, in our examples, you'll notice I'm using them alone. Possessive adjective cannot be used alone. I have to use it together with a noun. So instead of saying that is hers, I would have to say that is, and then I say that is her pencil. Okay, I can't just say that is her. Then in that case, I would need a possessive pronoun. So when I use it together with the possessive adjective and a noun, that together as a possessive adjective, not a pronoun. A little bit confusing because they're similar, but just think possessive pronouns we use alone, possessive adjectives I use together with a noun. Okay. And then reflexive pronouns. Reflexive pronouns are a little bit tricky, but not really. We basically use them in two ways. We use them, one, when you do an action to yourself, or when you want to emphasize that you did an action alone. Okay. The reflexive pronouns in English are myself, yourself, or yourselves, because you can be singular or it can be plural. It can refer to just one person or more than one person. Himself, herself, itself, ourselves, and themselves. So you'll notice anytime that it is singular, I use self. And then anytime that it is plural, I use selves. Okay. So a couple of examples here. I'll do one for the first way that we use reflexive pronouns, which is when I do the action to myself. So let's say that I'm making dinner and I'm chopping vegetables and the knife slips, and then, uh-oh, I cut myself, right? I cut myself. So here, I'm doing the action, and I'm doing the action to me. So I use a reflexive pronoun. The other way that I might use it is I might use it to emphasize that I did that action alone. So can you imagine like a small child who maybe made a sandwich, right? And they say, hey, Mom, guess what? I did it myself. Right? In other words, the child wants to emphasize that I made the sandwich and I did it without help, right? I did it alone. I did it by myself. I did it alone. So two ways that we use reflexive pronouns: an action you do to yourself and an action that you did alone. You didn't need any help for that action. Next type of pronoun we use is demonstrative pronouns. Demonstrative pronouns are kind of location pronouns in a way. So we have singular and plural, and we have near and far. And then that helps us to say something about the location. So I might have a singular and near is going to be this. Singular and far is going to be that. Plural and near, these. And then plural and far, those. So let's say that I'm talking about some papers that are close to me. I'm going to say these papers are for homework. It's going to be papers that are close to me, and then because it's plural, I'm going to use the plural form of the demonstrative pronoun. Maybe I'm talking about something that's far away from me. So I might say that dog across the street is cute. Okay, so right across the street, it's kind of far from me. So I want to use the demonstrative pronoun that shows a location that's far. And because dog is singular, then I'm going to use the singular form of the demonstrative pronoun. So demonstrative pronouns show location relative to where you are, and they show singular or plural. Next type of pronoun is an indefinite pronoun. Indefinite pronouns we use for things that are not specific, right? You might recognize here the word define or definition, right? And then this prefix in means not. So indefinite means not defined or no definition. So there's no specific reference. We don't know exactly what we're talking about when we use indefinite pronouns. So indefinite pronouns are used usually by combining different words with every, some, any, no. And then you can combine them with words like one, body, thing. There's other combinations that you can make, but those are some of the most common ones. And so I might get something like everyone, or somebody, or nothing, or anyone, or nobody, or everything, right? It's all kinds of different combinations that you can make. But they just refer to something that's not exactly defined. One thing that you want to keep in mind is that indefinite pronouns agree with a singular verb. Okay, indefinite pronouns agree with a singular verb. Determiners, some determiners can actually be used as pronouns. So some of the ones that you can use as pronouns include another, right, that essentially means one other. Or you can also use others. So now notice that another would be used for singular, and then others would be used for plural, to replace a plural noun. Now I want to talk about some mistakes that I see frequently in student writing with pronouns. And the first is pronoun agreement. So let's read the sentence here. The teacher told the students to do his homework. Do you notice a problem with this sentence? If you don't, let me point it out to you. So here is the noun that I have, the students. And then here is the pronoun. So every pronoun has to have a noun that it's referring back to. We call this the referent. And that just means the noun that the pronoun is the same thing as. It's calling back to that noun. So in this case, his and students, I've got students, which is plural, but I've got the pronoun his, which is singular. And that's a problem. I need to have just like I need to have good subject-verb agreement, I also need to have good pronoun agreement with the noun that it's modifying. So here, because I've got a singular noun, then I would also want to have a singular pronoun. So instead, I want to say something like the teacher told the students to do their homework. Now I have both a singular, a plural noun, students, and a plural pronoun. I could fix this also by changing the noun. So the teacher told the student to do his homework. So again, now here I've got a singular noun and a singular pronoun to agree. Pronouns also have to agree in gender, and this can be a little bit tricky sometimes because English doesn't have a neutral, a singular pronoun for the third person. They or their or them is neutral. It doesn't matter if it's male or female, but when I use he or she or him or her or his or hers, all of a sudden there is nothing that says for men and women when it's singular. So a lot of times what happens in English is native speakers will actually use the third person pronoun as a gender neutral singular third person pronoun. But technically this is not correct, right? If I say the teacher told the student to do their homework, I've got a number agreement problem here. I've got a singular noun, but I've got a plural pronoun. So one way that you can fix this is you can use his or her, or him or her, or he or she. The teacher told the student to do his or her homework. So now I've got agreement. I've got singular here and I've got singular here. But you can see that writing his or her every single time, that can become a little annoying maybe to write it every time. For the reader, it might be confusing to read every time. So I think that an easier way to fix this is to try, whenever you're talking about something in general and you're not talking about a specific person, try to use third person plural. So use students. The teacher told the students, and that way you can use the gender neutral third person pronoun their. The teacher told the students to do their homework. And that's a lot easier, that there's no confusion there, and it's not too much to read or too confusing. Another problem that students sometimes have is missing reference. Every pronoun needs to have a noun that it's referring back to, but sometimes students leave that off, and so it's confusing what the pronoun is referring to. Look at this example. When I went to the post office, they told me I needed a stamp. They. Who is they? Is it the other customers? Is it the workers at the counter? It's not clear. So if you don't have a reference for your pronoun, then you can't use a pronoun yet. You have to first use a noun. So I might say the worker, the workers, right? Instead of when I went to the post office, the workers told me I needed a stamp. That makes a little bit more sense. It's more clear. In addition to that, you can have what's called an ambiguous reference. Ambiguous just means not clear or unclear reference. And that means that you might not be able to figure out, there might be more than one noun and it's not exactly clear which noun the pronoun refers back to. So here I've got, my sister called my mother to tell her she won a prize. So here I've got pronouns here. Who won the prize? Is it my sister? Was it my mother? It's unclear. The way that this sentence is phrased, it's unclear. So there's different ways that you can fix this problem, but most of the time it involves rewriting the sentence. If you have an ambiguous reference, you've got to restructure the sentence to make it more clear. So I might say, my sister won a prize and called my mother to inform her. Right, something like that. It's still basically the same idea, but now the reference is more clear. Okay? All right, that's it for pronouns. If you have any questions, just let me know.